Gillmor. This is a special edition of the Gillmor Gang. We're, as we have been the last 3 years or so, are live to you from the show floor at Dreamforce. And we've got some very special people on our show and some animals on the screen. It's very nice. We've got, in order of recognition, I guess you'd say, that Robert Scoble, you're the Chief Robert Scoble Officer at Rackspace, right?
Well, Chief Startup Liaison Officer.
Thank you.
I go around and I spoke here yesterday 3 times, so giving the love out at Salesforce.
Fantastic. We've also got from Forrester, a great research company, we've got Principal Analyst and VP, John Rymer. Welcome, John.
Thanks very much. Good to be with you.
We've also got someone who's been on this show several times in the past. He's now actually a member of Salesforce. He's EVP, and we don't know what he actually is doing, but it's very exciting. And that's Adam Bosworth. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And last but certainly not least is my colleague in market strategy, John Taschek. Welcome, John.
Thanks, Steve. Good to be here.
Great to be here. So we've seen some pretty amazing stuff, wouldn't you say, John Rymer?
Yes.
What's going on here? Is Salesforce onto something?
Well, yeah, has been for some time. But I mean, what I see here is a very substantial step forward with the platform. It was interesting. It's been interesting to me that I was looking at Salesforce One as primarily a mobility layer, but I can see it's much deeper than that, and covering all sorts of devices and experiences, first of all. But then it looks like there's a lot of plumbing that's been done under the covers to enable mobile from a variety of development surfaces, which is really important because it's coming from, the apps are coming and the great ideas are coming from a lot of different sources, as I'm sure you've seen.
We were just at a Q&A that with the media and the industrial
industry analysts.
Thank you.
And industrial era.
Yes, there are all kinds of analysts, and they were all in this room with Mark Benioff, and he basically revealed something that we've all sort of started to notice, that what was the chatter client, all of a sudden, I believe this morning, went and became auto-pushed to become the Salesforce One client. So Adam Bosworth, you were at Microsoft, you were responsible for many of the technologies that Google then ran away with, like Ajax and so on and so forth. I mean, it was sort of an outgrowth of your work with Access and Outlook Web Services, and just the Microsoft strategy seems to have been trumped by the web, and in turn, apps seem to have really started to take over as the driving force of this next evolution. Would you agree with that?
I think there are 2 driving forces, and how the balance plays out is not yet clear. One is the social networks, and the other one are the apps. And figuring out where you do customer service, for example, app or social network, or both, is still very much something in play. But they're both massively new, they're both changing the world, and they both have really very little to do with the web that we knew, let alone the Microsoft that we knew back in the day of the dinosaur.
So, what is, John talks about massive changes under the hood, basically, to enable this drive toward mobile. Can you give us any insight into what that entails and what's coming next?
Well, I mean, what it entailed was a hell of a lot of hard work. I mean, basically, there were 2 kinds of hard work. One were to do everything API first. So we weren't the only people rethinking what you could do with mobile. Anyone who could take a mobile framework or platform could start to rethink, and maybe Node.js and Heroku could think what to do with mobile and start to invent things on top of us that we might never invent. The other was figuring out how to actually take the legacy and all of the training and expertise our customers have in things like Visualforce and allow that to play forward and to still have a meaningful role in a mobile platform. And that was almost as significant a change. It was a huge Herculean piece of engineering by some of the engineers. So between API first, pretty much across the board, in the very rare cases where API first didn't happen, we all hit ourselves and said that was a terrible oversight. Mostly it will get fixed by 188 in spring.
188 meaning
February.
The next release of.
And mostly it was done. I mean, fundamentally, we focused on don't ever do anything that some other mobile customer couldn't do, is not us.
John Taschek, what's your take on how fast we're moving?
I always feel we're moving way faster than the competitive market, and probably not as fast as customers want us to in many cases. And I think with this step, with this platform, with Salesforce Live, we are actually delivering what they want in a way that they want it, which is mainly through the mobile devices that John had mentioned before. It's their dashboard into their lives. It's the way they access their consumer information, and it's now coming in much more into the enterprise, blending that together.
Robert Scoble, you're everywhere all the time. Nobody understands how you actually do this. But
I don't understand it.
Teleportation.
yes.
I don't understand how I got from one hotel to another with 130,000 people here.
Yeah, well, the rain I think helped you, just a little. But seriously, what's your take on the evolution of what many people call consumerization into the enterprise? It seems to be gathering some force right now.
What I really notice on the show floor and in my talks is mobile has really matured. It's the first chapter of mobile is over, and we're about to start a new chapter, which I call context, because now that we have mobile phones, we can follow you around from place to place or experience to experience and know something about you before you become a customer, right? And in my talks, I talk about going around wineries in Napa, and if you go through Sutter Home, you're a different kind of customer than if you go to Camus before coming to my winery, right? And I think this is really just at the beginning edges where people are starting to understand. For instance, yesterday in my talks, I talked about low energy Bluetooth radios. I asked how many people know what a low energy Bluetooth radio is. Nobody raised their hands. And I explained it's a little radio that costs $10 and spits a number into the air, right? And by the way, we all have one. If you have iOS 7 and an iPhone, you have one inside your phone. So I could build a new social network. I could build new experiences in shopping malls. I could build new experiences here on the show floor. If we come back in a year, we're going to see a lot of these radios as you walk around the show floor, and your mobile phone for Dreamforce is going to do stuff as you walk around near one of these radios and near each other. So new social networks are now possible. New experiences in the real world are possible. New retail experiences are now possible. And it's going to be very interesting to see what this man does over the next year to connect all these dots and make new things possible, which there's a lot of demand for. You guys
want to respond to that?
It will be interesting.
We're mysterious. John Rymer, what's your future look? What do you see is coming off of this wave?
Well, so picking up on what you were just describing, the level of insight and connections that are possible now is really amazing. It's really way beyond what we can do today, or even what people even think about today. Part of realizing it is going to be, and Adam, I think you were doing work on this in the healthcare space, is balancing with privacy and balancing with permission to actually engage with somebody. And I think we have a long way to go there. It seems like we all have a long way to go there. But we're now in a position to start to work on those problems real time and figure it out.
We're going to trust companies based on how they deal with privacy. For instance, are they transparent? Do they tell us everything that they're gathering on us? And like Google, if you go to google.com/privacy, you can sort of see what they're gathering. Are they correctable? Because I live on a golf course, and some of these apps are telling me all about golf things. I hate golf. I don't play golf. But I live on a golf course, so the internet gets the wrong idea about why I live on a golf course. And then, can you turn it off? Can you say, I don't want to be stalked right now. I don't want to be studied as I go around the floor here or something like that.
Right, or in this situation or what have you.
I think that's going to be a very key factor. I mean, I think one area that people haven't yet internalized as a major change in this company is the purchase of ExactTarget. Before ExactTarget, what we were really good at was helping you build solutions and managing data. What we added was the ability to listen and react. When you move to a mobile world, the ability to listen and react, and when one of the main things you're listening to is social, this becomes a very interesting combination. And I think the ability to react intelligently to the customer, and react means both things. It means tell them what, it's the flashes of brilliance where you think, wow, how did they know to tell me that? But it's also the flash to understand, I'm not in the mood right now, back off. And figuring out how to deliver a user experience which is helpful, brilliant, insightful, but courteous is going to be the key challenge of the next generation of mobile, because people will expect context, they will expect insight, they will even expect predictive brilliance, as in, you should pull into the gas station because your tires are low. But how they react to that is going to be very much a matter of how we balance that ability to be insightful and brilliant with that ability to be courteous.
Does this require Salesforce to hire new kinds of people? Because Gary Vaynerchuk just gave a talk right after I gave my talk. So I talk about the geeky stuff, the radios and the wearable computers. And he's like, okay, I got that database. I know everybody who's tweeted about me, but now I have to do something human with it without freaking people out. Does that require some new kind of emotional intelligence maybe on your team to build a new kind of experience?
I do think we will be hiring. I mean, already the company is changing who we hire pretty significantly. I was at the management offsite with John, and Mark asked the people who were new to them last year to stand up and raise their hands. And a pretty surprising percentage of the top 80 people stood up and raised their hands, wouldn't you say, John? And that was just to address one issue where we needed to change, not necessarily this one. But yes, I think one of the things that's impressive about this company is when change occurs, the company changes some of the players to enable that change. I mean, I'm here partly for that reason. And I do think we will bring new skills on board, and those new skills will be more focused around how do we deliver the kind of thing that makes the consumer feel that we are both insightful but courteous, and then make it really easy for our customers to deliver that experience to their customers.
Right.
And if we get that right, you know, we won't just be a $5 billion a year company or whatever it was they were predicting for next year. And that's a very interesting inflection point for this.
Right. And we keep finding that customers are really hungry for this kind of guidance and experience because there's so many risks, and there's just limited talent, limited time. So it's a great opportunity.
John, what do you think our opportunity is for the next 6 months, since things seem to be compressing so quickly?
Yeah, even 6 months seems a long way away now.
Yeah, it does.
But it's going to come pretty soon. I think there's a tremendous amount of low-hanging fruit that technology providers have not been able to harvest, and you know, these are some of the industries that we're entering. I mean, in healthcare, it's the passing of a medical record. It just seems like it should be obvious, but it's not. It's more difficult than we imagine. But I think that's something that we can do. I think that we'll see a lot of things around connected people to connected devices in the context that Robert was talking about. I think that comes true in the retailing space. I think it comes true in the. I think it's pervasive. There's so many opportunities for us to really take advantage of that.
What's interesting is an analogy to what happened when this company started. Mark looked at what was going on with the consumers, and he said, "Why aren't things that work that well for the enterprise?" Right. That was sort of one of the inspirations for this company. And now we're seeing the same thing happen, not just in B2C, which is what we were just talking about, but I went into a very large company that shall be nameless, but a big partner of ours in New York City when I was out asking questions, which is what I do when I start anything. I wander around asking them questions, about 6 weeks ago. And it turned out their problem was B2B. But it also turned out that they needed the identical solution
Right.
for B2B that I've been looking at for B2C. And when I sort of sketched out for them how we might do this, they asked me to come and talk to a lot more of their people right away. So I think the companies are upping the ante, not just for how they talk to consumers as customers, but how do they talk to employees as customers?
Yep.
How do they deliver the same degree of courtesy and the same degree of context and insight, maybe even more, to employees when those employees are their customers? So, I think that we're seeing that the B2B world is evolving very rapidly as they look over the shoulder of the B2C world and go, if they can have that, if United can tell me immediately when my flight is delayed, why can't, GE tell me immediately if my wing is delayed?
Right.
But people have been abstracted. Technology has abstracted people from the equation, and they're coming back in full force now.
Yeah.
They have much more power.
I think the mobile revolution really is changing what you can do. I just saw a startup here that makes it possible for salespeople to enter data so much faster because it's on mobile, and you're going to give better facts because you just got out of the meeting.
They're using it to begin with instead of not. Instead of waiting and going back, they're using it right at that point in time.
And it's a lot more fun too, so treating your employees better, it's more fun to use mobile to enter this data. I remember all the salespeople always hated Salesforce because
I would not say that ever.
They hated entering the data because their boss was forcing them to enter the sales funnel data into Salesforce, right? Now it's a lot more fun because you get right out of the meeting, you punch a few buttons to enter that data about the sales funnel. Now Salesforce is a lot different than that today, but it still has that at the core of the company. It's helping people keep in touch with people, which is customers, right?
Right. This point that Adam was on, I think, is really crucial in that we talk about the internet, you talk about the internet of customers, we talk about, in Forrester, we talk about the age of the customer, but customer means the people you serve, the people you work with. It's not just B2C, and actually the rest of the economy is way bigger than B2C. B2B, public sector, employees, patients, donors if you're a nonprofit, whoever it happens to be. It really spreads throughout every aspect of the economy. And it's not just consumers.
We're seeing it. I was talking to a company that is a waste hauler this morning, and they have their B2B customers and their B2C customers wanting to know when will the truck show up, did the truck miss them, can they do a special order, and expecting it to be at their fingertips. The other comment I'd make is I think if there's a common theme that we're beginning to hear at this conference, it's pretty clear, I think, for some of us this was coming. We're moving away from this concept there's marketing and then there's sales and then there's service.
Absolutely.
And we're moving into a world where there is engagement.
Yes.
And we're looking at the lifetime value of that engagement.
Yep.
And that's a big change. And the silos that have historically managed companies are beginning to crumble. I just came out of a couple of marketing talks, and this change precipitated, I agree with you, Robert, I think both by mobile and the social networks, which flatten things, is driving a rethink about how do you engage your customer rather than how do you market to the customer, sell to the customer. Yes, sure, you need the money. You record the sale. But at the end of the day, for most of us these days, the lifetime value of the customer is a pretty significant multiple of the value of that sale.
Yep.
Amazon gave my wife a free, there was something she double ordered, and they said, don't even bother to ship it back.
Don't even ship it back.
Impressed. And I'm thinking about the lifetime value my wife represents to Amazon. They gave her 0.01% of her lifetime value. It was very nice, but someone there knew the story.
When you go to the Ritz, which we're going to be at tonight at Half Moon Bay, there's 4 separate computer systems that run that place. There's an open table computer that runs the restaurant. There's a spa finder that runs the spa. There's a computer system that runs the hotel, and another one that runs the cheap restaurant. None of them talk to each other, and none of them talk to Foursquare or Facebook or Salesforce. None of them are tracking who we are when we walk in the door. And this is the Ritz, which spends big dollars on customer service.
And Cartier does the same thing. And you know that sooner or later they're going to be disintermediated or fix it. Just as, if you weren't on the web in 1996, it was acceptable in 1998, maybe. But if you weren't on the web in 2001, someone else was eating your lunch.
Yep.
The same thing is happening now. We're in the acceptable stage.
Yeah, I want to just before we run out of time. You basically, I mean, today I didn't actually read the article, but there's a story about Bill Gates saying goodbye to Steve Ballmer. You know, end of an era, etc. You were, I think, largely responsible for encouraging and then, you know, making it happen to build XML into, you know, Microsoft's roadmap. And as a result of that came web services and this.
I was also responsible for Ajax, by the way, which was actually, and turns out, I think, a more enduring value. And these days, if I had to do it over, I hate to say this, Steve, but I would do YAML. I would just not do XML. But
yeah, well, we understand the JSON, you know, story. But my point would be that what do you see is happening right now that may you may be needing to encourage people to understand something which wasn't obvious or intuitive 10 years ago. What is it about today that's not intuitive?
I don't think it's the standards. I think it's the idea that everything is an event handler. That it's why Node.js is taking off explosively. It's why Scala is starting to take off. I mean, we're moving from a world. That's why Exact Target Journey Builder was so exciting. We're moving to a world where from all the way from the business analyst all the way to the geek, we are in the face of listen and react. We are no longer in the face of a web page and fire back a web page. It's a very different model. It's a model that is not about request and response. It's a model about constant listening, constant reacting. That's a very different architecture. It's not the one that powered the web. You can cobble together a model that works using the web architecture, but it's not the optimal architecture, and it's an architecture that absolutely requires what we used to think of as black magic. It absolutely requires machine learning. It absolutely requires analytics, because the filters that you flow this data through to make sure that you're reacting at the right time to the right people, that you are simultaneously being insightful but courteous, are coming out of the courtesy of a kind of analytics we could only dream of 10 years ago. And I built the analytics for Citicorp back in God knows when.
So like in the Graduate, the guy who leans over and says plastics, you're leaning over and saying analytics.
I'm saying intelligence about data. That's analytics, that's machine learning, that's relevance. And I'm also saying reaction. It doesn't do any good to learn if you don't do anything. If you build a system that's sitting there statically telling you that you've got a customer in trouble or a garbage truck is late, but it's not also automatically making sure the right people are notified about this at the right time.
Okay, I'm notifying us at the right time. We're out of time. I want to thank John Rymer, Robert Scoble, Adam Bosworth, John Taschek, and I'm Steve Gillmor. This has been a special edition of the Gillmor Gang. I'm not sure which camera to look into, but please come down and see the next, 2 or 3 days here at Moscone Center. It's fantastic what's going on here. Finally, we can start talking about all this stuff. Thanks everybody who showed up, and especially those who will be showing up in the next few days. Bye-bye.